Are you thinking about trying fasting? Intermittent fasting, extended fasting, it really has caught on, eh? It's so mainstream right now. Well, listen, this video is for you. Hey team, Mike here at After 40 Fitness. Great question again. This one comes up all the time in social media and from my clients, and it's around fasting. Should I? Can I? What are the nuances of it? What are the pros and cons? Well, I'm going to spend time on that today. You're going to enjoy this video. Hey, listen, if you haven't yet, or if this is your first time to my channel, please do subscribe. Hit the like button. You're going to enjoy this information. But make sure you hit subscribe and the bell icon notifications. I'm putting out 2 or 3 videos a week right now of health and wellness, definitely keto and low carb. That's my passion. But also workouts, HIIT style workouts. You're going to want to get notified when those videos come out, and then you can decide based on the title if it's of interest to you or not. But this is one of those topics that, since it is so mainstream right now, really has caught on big, is this term fasting, intermittent fasting, that this is one I'm hoping you'll share, whether in your social media groups or just someone you know who's under a carb restricted program, whether keto or low carb or not, but is considering or might be considering fasting. Share this with them. You're going to appreciate the information. You know they will too. But on that note, let's get started first with the pros and the cons, and then we'll talk about 5 tips and tricks to make sure that your fast is as successful as it can be. By way of context, just to set the stage, fasting is awesome, and it has a really cool history. You might want to spend some time one day, just Google history of fasting, and you'll see how long it's been around. I mean, for centuries, no, for millennia. In fact, Hippocrates, from whom we get the Hippocratic Oath, that's 500 years before Christ, just so you know. He was known for, or renowned for, admonishing fasting as a way to treat certain illnesses, certain conditions. I remember reading a story about Genghis Khan and the Mongols, that they often would go into war with the Chinese or somebody else, and they didn't have to bring supply chains. So the Chinese, they'd be fighting the Chinese army, who would have trains of horses pulling carriages full of food to supply their men with food, and uprun the Mongols, who didn't have any of that because they were able to go a week or 2 at a time without food, right? Full energy, able to fight, and yet they were so good at keto without even knowing the term, but so good at it that they were able to fast and not be hungry for extended periods of time, and that was a huge edge for them. But we have pros and cons. Let's start with some pros. In fact, I'll give you number 1. The one is, it's obviously easy. All right, just imagine that. Think about it for a second, how easy it is to miss a meal. Now, I'm not talking about cravings and stuff. I'm just saying, in principle, how easy it is to miss a meal. I mean, what could be easier than that? And then, especially when you compare it to other meal plans where you have to have 3, 4, 5, 6 meals a day. All right, that's much more complicated to plan out than, say, skipping breakfast or skipping lunch. Second pro is it's very cheap. I mean, think about it. You're not eating. You're going to spend less on food, less on groceries. In fact, saving money in this way means you can spend more money on the food you do buy when you do eat, right, and come out net neutral. Third, I want you to think about this one for a second. It's very flexible. Right? There's no cookie cutter solution when it comes to fasting. There are so many options. I'll give you a few. So I don't know what you think of when you hear the term fasting, but it just means abstinence from food. And so there's this term that we use in the keto intermittent fasting space called an extended fast. Extended being anything beyond 24 hours. Anything less than 24 hours gets referred to as intermittent fasting. And so it's really that you get to pick the one that suits your lifestyle, your family life, your schedule best. So you may hear phrases like, and I'll show you some options here. Probably the most common one is 16 and 8, where you're going to ingest all your food in an 8-hour window. So think about that for a second. That's not overly tough to do. It typically means somewhere between, let's say, 10 and 6 you'll eat. So you'll push breakfast off to 10 a.m., and then eat your last meal at 6. By far more common is this version of 16 and 8, where you break your fast at noon. You skip breakfast. Okay, and so you'll have all your food between noon and 8. Right? Easy peasy. And then from 6 p.m. until 8 or till noon the next day, you fast. All right? You can then extend that to what I'm partial to, which is 18 and 6. So instead, eat at 2 p.m. in the afternoon, and again, dinner with the family at 7, done all my food by 8. And there's an 18 and 6. There's another one called 20 and 4. All your food, both meals, and maybe even a snack in a 4-hour window. So what I want you to get by it's flexible so that you can ease into it. And when I first talk to one of my clients about fasting, I just first of all say to them, what I want you to do is focus on when you start, your first bite of the day, and your last. And then try to make sure you can force that into a 12-hour window. 12 hours. Think about it. That's 8 to 8. No one should have an issue with a 12-hour window. And then we'll start to compress it on the end to get it down to 10, and before you know it, you're at 8. And then when you have food, you eat well. In fact, number 4 is going to be feasting, just like fasting has been part of our history, especially our religious history, forever. Being able to treat yourself every once in a while, that's part of a happy life, a sustainable diet regimen even. Number 5 is how good it is at controlling your glucose. I mean, think about it. Intermittent fasting means that you're going for extended periods of time without food. So you're going to have lower glucose, you're going to have lower insulin, you're going to have improved insulin sensitivity. This is really getting to the heart of what's called insulin resistance. And it's a driver behind obesity and behind a lot of chronic diseases like diabetes. Now, number 6 I'm going to talk about is a big one. It's that fasting is muscle sparing. There are many people who consider fasting and they think, well, I'm going to lose muscle in that process. The beauty of ketosis is that ketones are muscle sparing. They prevent us from losing anywhere near as much muscle as, in fact, let me digress for a second. I'm going to show you a study here, and I'm going to put the link down below to an article by scientists that showed that the average diet, the average calorie-restricted diet, could be the Zone, the Ornish, Jenny Craig, Weight Watchers, it doesn't matter, but the average calorie-restricted diet will cost you somewhere in the area of about 30% of your weight loss from muscle. I mean, let that sink in. 30% on any other calorie-restricted diet, which means you lose 10 pounds, 3 of it's muscle. That hurts. We do ourselves a huge injustice if we give away any muscle. In that regard, fasting, and by extension keto, because you can't help it, you will go into ketosis. If you're fasting, you'll produce ketones naturally as a byproduct of burning fat. Oh, it's so cool. But those ketones are considered muscle sparing in that they'll prevent you from dropping anywhere near as much muscle. Small percentage, but instead of 30%, it's somewhere in the 8% range. And the way around it is twofold. 1, adequate protein. 2, is going to be some form of resistance training. Not walking, not leisurely riding your bike, and not swimming. Those are great. Those are conditioning exercises. You want to keep muscle and preferably add a couple of ounces or a pound a year, you need to be pushing against resistance. Number 7, combining IF with low carb. So they go together naturally, right? In your time of fasting, you are low carb, whether you know it or not. You're ultra low carb. In fact, you're 0 calorie, but that's ultra low carb, which means when you do eat, you really should eat low carb to, cut out white sugar as much as possible, which means you actually extend the benefits of fasting by not spiking insulin. So even though you're ingesting calories, do your best to make sure that they're good quality vegetables and meats, right? And fats. Number 8 benefit or pro of intermittent fasting is this beautiful thing that happens in our body called autophagy. If you haven't heard of that word autophagy, you need to know it's awesome. It was actually kind of written best about in 2016 by Dr. Osumi out of Japan. He got the Nobel Prize for it, for really documenting this wonderful process in our body called autophagy. So what it is, it's a process in our body where our body, are these scavenger cells, can go out and they can find old, damaged, dying cells and then recycle their parts, recycle their important parts, their amino acids, anything of value. It therefore strengthens the body as a whole by getting rid of the weak links. Oh, it's very cool. And fasting is the quickest, easiest way to kickstart autophagy. I also want to mention pro number 9, which is the ability to not only circumvent or minimize, but to prevent some chronic illnesses. And the one that comes to mind for me is Alzheimer's. I don't know if you know this or not, but Alzheimer's by many scientists is now being called a form of diabetes. Right? They actually can show glucose impairment in the brain causing Alzheimer's. So it's actually been called now lately diabetes type 3. And so studies, particularly first of all in rats, are showing that intermittent fasting, not only does it reduce the advancement or slow the advancement of Alzheimer's, but it slows the cognitive decline from the disease. Right? And that's translating now into studies of late in humans showing this improvement from fasting, but particularly from ketones, because it is a glucose impairment in the brain. If we can switch our brain away from burning glucose to burning ketones as fuel, then we don't have the issue. So it's showing some reversal effects. It's definitely showing a slowing in the decline associated with Alzheimer's, and human studies are just starting to show that now. So it's awesome. All right. Not surprising then that autophagy will also lead to a decrease in the level of oxidative stress and inflammation. Also, parts of the brain, of cognitive function, of neurotropic functionality are improved when inflammation goes away. So those are let's face it, oxidative stress and inflammation, 2 of the biggest drivers of chronic or pathological disease in humans. On the con side, make no mistake, IF, intermittent fasting in general, is not a magic bullet. Okay, not everyone experiences weight loss benefits from it out of the gate. It really is a patience play. It's a patience game. It takes time to flip that switch from being a long-term, for decades, a carb burner into being not just a fat burner, but an efficient fat burner. And depending on the person, depending on the level of glycogen in their system, particularly in their muscle glycogen, it typically can take 12 to 36 hours in that window to go from being a fat burner to using fatty acids and producing ketones. And then to get efficient at oxidizing and using fatty acids and burning ketones, that can take days, if not weeks. So it's not something someone can jump into IF and expect to see a miracle in 24 or 46 hours. It often requires someone to, with a bit of understanding, some education, some knowledge, know that they're getting into something that they may not see benefits for or from for a month. Number 2, remember how I mentioned how it was easy? Number 1 pro was that it was easy? Yeah, it is. Skipping a meal, what could be simpler than that? However, for many people, that's difficult to do. Right? The hardest part, is getting started. And for some people, just the idea of skipping a meal. For some people, that's just too stressful to even actually start. So again, a gradual approach. We talked about, getting all your food in 12 hours, and then 11, and then 10, and then the cutting to 8. The other thing is that some people, when they cut carbs, because again, we've been carb burners for so long, because of that switch, some people experience brain fog, lethargy, heartburn, indigestion. I had the lethargy. When I first started IF, I was like napping twice a day. I just couldn't get my energy up, and it took a while. In fact, it took a month. Number three con is that it has been referred to as reward-based eating. In other words, you IF for a period of time, again, whatever your length of time is, and then you reward yourself with a bit of a feast. Right? Well, you reward yourself with food. For some people, that makes them somewhat preoccupied with food. All they think about during their fast is when they get to eat and what they're going to eat. And it makes it difficult for them to control their food intake once they start again. So reward-based eating is often referred to by people much smarter than me in the psychological space as kind of inducing an eating disorder. I think that's too simple to categorically say, because I don't do that. And I know many people who love IF don't have those issues with food. But if you are one of those people who's prone to that, be aware of it. Try not to focus on food. Set your alarm, forget about food. And when the alarm goes off, eat by the clock. Maybe that'll help you not make it into an eating disorder. Okay, just be aware that that's been linked. How about that? Number 4 is that IF is somewhat addictive. Okay, first you need to know there's some psychotropic, neurotropic effects that happen. The catecholamines in our brains kick in, and we actually get rewarded, a reward sense from very much like a runner's high. We can get a fasting high, and that becomes addictive, and that kind of rewards us with a nice feeling, with a nice high. And because of that, it appeals to the competitive nature of some people that, hey, if some fasting is good, then more is better. And that's also a short hop to an eating disorder. Once we come up with a regimen, I ask you to stick with it, right? Only with consultation, whether it's with a coach or with your health practitioner, ideally a doctor, would you want to go beyond and start changing your IF into something longer. Okay. Number 5 con is that people talk about nutritional deficiencies. Right? At what point or at what level of fasting do you run the risk of becoming deficient in nutrients? Well, that's hard to say. That's a very individual thing. All right. So someone may also have an issue getting their protein in. And this is what I'm going to focus on. So while you can supplement electrolytes and apple cider vinegar and pickle juice for sodium during your IF, during your fast, protein you can't, right? Then you're not really fasting. So it's protein that I'm most worried about, the building blocks of everything, of our musculature, of our bone structure, of all of our hormones and our enzymes. The vast majority of them are built on amino acids. So it's very tough in one meal, or 2 meals for that matter, to make sure you hit your protein for the day. You must make sure that you are getting sufficient protein not to lose muscle. Okay, because while keto and IF are called muscle sparing, make no mistake, they are not muscle proof. Right? You could potentially lose a bit of muscle if you are in a negative nitrogen balance the bulk of the day. So people will often think, okay, I'm going to have a couple meals. I'm going to do it like, Mike, I like your 18 and 6. I'm going to get all my meals in a 6-hour window. So I'm going to have 2 meals and they're each going to have 30 grams of protein. That's 60 grams for the day. In a tight window, which means the rest of the day you're in a negative nitrogen balance, which costs you amino acids. Your body has to pull them from somewhere. If you're negative, you're not ingesting enough, they will come from muscle. So I'm going to recommend that you must hit your protein macro for the day. So if it's 100 grams, if you're going to go 1 meal a day or even 2 meals a day, if you do 2 meals a day, you know you need 50 and 50, which is why I'm partial to that 18 and 6, because in that 6-hour window, I can eat 3 times. I can eat 3 times in 6 hours, no problem, and they're 30 grams each, 30, 35 each, 100 grams a day of protein. I feel good about it. I got some muscle because of it, and I want to keep what I got. Okay? So it's tough in shorter windows to get all those nutrients you have to really focus on to make sure it happens. Number 6, last con I want to touch on is when it comes to medications. If you are on a medication that you have to take with food, then you really don't have a choice. You have to take it in your feeding window. So that's not so bad. I suppose you have meds you have to take twice a day. Well, you have no choice. You cannot go beyond 2 meals a day. So pick a window like I've discussed of 18 and 6 if you like it, or even 16 and 8, but just 2 of your meals are going to have your meds included. It's when a doctor says to you that you need to have those meds first thing in the morning and last thing in the day. Then only then would I say to you that, okay, you don't have a choice. Meds come first. Your health must come first for the time that you're on those meds. Right? However, the amount of fat you need to ingest to get the most out of a particular med, and again, I'm not a doctor in this regard, but you can check with your doctor, is only a few grams. So in all the studies I've ever read on fat-soluble vitamins, it only takes a few grams of fat to get the most nutrient value out of your vitamins, your minerals, and your meds that are fat-soluble. If they're water-soluble, take them with a glass of water. Piece of cake. If they're fat soluble and they require food, they actually don't require food, they actually require fats because they're fat soluble. So in that case, do it. Have a little bit of fat in the morning. At least you get to use fat. And the key to that is that, as you know, fat doesn't spike insulin. So while you're ingesting some calories to take your meds, at least you have in the back of your head, the knowledge that you're not spiking your insulin and therefore you're not taking yourself out of fat burning, right? And you can get your meds in and keep your doctor happy. Let me just run through a couple things as far as timing goes and types of fast. So even though you can pick an 18-6 or a 16-8 or a 12-12, whatever your chosen methodology is for timing, then there's types of fasts. Okay, so when people talk about fasting, you'll see this often in social media. What breaks a fast? Can I have coffee? Can I have coffee with MCT oil or butter or heavy whipped cream? And people often just voice their opinion on whether that's a yes or a no. See, I never do. I always ask, or say, it depends. What kind of a fast are you doing? Is it a dry fast? Is it a water-only fast? Is it a fat fast? A PSMF fast? Could it be a clean or a flexible fast? The only one, if you think about it, the only one that coffee with cream, with heavy whipped cream, would break is a dry fast or a water-only fast. All the other fasts, there's so many types of fasts. Just Google types of fast and you'll get inundated. Juice fast, protein fast, fat fast, celery fast, potato fast. There's hundreds. Sure, you can say that anything's a fast, right? So to arbitrarily answer what breaks a fast is really just kind of silly. So I think you first need to decide in your fast, is it a water only? Is it a clean fast? And when I say clean, that is by far the most common, where we allow coffee and tea and apple cider vinegar, maybe pickle juice and electrolytes. And then the more flexible of the clean fast would also include sweeteners. A couple of shots of stevia in your coffee. Or you allow yourself a Diet Coke. 0 carb, 0 calorie. That is the definition of keto friendly. You should absolutely be able to have that on any fast if it has 0 carbs, 0 calorie, and no spike to insulin. Okay, so that would be more of a flexible fast. But then people ask about, well, can I put butter or ghee in my coffee? How about some MCT oil? Well, that means you're into more of the fat fast and/or an autophagy fast, since none of those things, fats, don't stop autophagy. Okay, so you need to be careful about picking your type of fast, and before you judge anybody else's fast, be clear on what type of fast they're doing. So another thing I'll talk about is whether longer is better. You have to toy with that. Longer is better. There are a few things that kick in once you go to a day and beyond. I often will, from Sunday dinner, not eat again till Tuesday lunch. I love it. Do that once or twice a month. Okay? By the way, the longer, there's some more anti-aging effects. Telomere lengthening kicks in, another feature that goes right along with autophagy for lengthening our lifespan. The HGH, the human growth hormone spike, is huge the longer you go. It gets up to like 2,000%. Another topic that comes up real quick is liquids during fasting. We kind of covered it. Make sure you know what you're going to drink and have it handy. Lots of water is obviously good, but not stupid amounts. Okay, make sure you get all your electrolytes in, your sodium, potassium, magnesium. You should always be having those. And lastly, I just want to comment on working out. If you do work out, then absolutely work out fasted. It also means that you can work out less intense when you're fasting and get better results. So on that note, folks, I hope you really enjoyed the video and got some good stuff out of it. I hope there's some stuff you can apply, and if so, do please share it. On that note, see you in the next one.
I'm dying to talk to you about this.
I eat for 8 hours and I fast for 16.
I can feel the difference.